One batch, two batch, penny and dime, true believers. We're gathered here again, not to talk about a defender or even an avenger, but a punisher, one could say. That's right, we're doing a deep dive into the continuation of the most brutal of the Marvel Netflix shows about the lone survivor of the Central Park Massacre. Castle to get biblical and bloody as he cracks some skulls. So let's crack open our war journals and start punishing. Pondering, Punisher, season 2. All right. So Dragon, that wasn't a great job doing the intro by me, but I will say this: I am so much more excited to talk about this show than I was the last time we did because I was one of the people that was a little down with Punisher season 1. I thought it kind of meandered all over the place. I thought that Micro and his family got decidedly way too much screen time. I thought we spent way too much screen time with Micro in front of the computer, and the whole thing kind of felt like 24 or a hacking show or something. It didn't really feel like the Punisher in a lot of respects. When we got to the Billy Russo stuff at the end, it got interesting. It got good. That finale was great. Don't get me wrong. It's a lot of fun. Punisher season 2. It's not perfect by any means. It's messy. It's bloody. It's story wise. I think while everything comes together, it's also a little all over the place. But Dragon, the big difference between Punisher Season 1 and Punisher Season 2 is that, the very least, every episode I feel like the plot is progressing. Like, things are getting driven forward in a big way. And I honestly feel like Punisher Season 2, barring maybe the Daredevil stuff, this one might be one of the best paced, Dragon. Like, this is one of the few that I feel actually kind of warrants the 13 episode run. Surprisingly, there really wasn't a time watching this where I got bored or dragged. I really thought this, just from top to bottom, outside of maybe the two villains being a little bit thematically disjointed. That's certainly a fair criticism of the season. By all means, I will take that. But I gotta tell you, Dragon, like, everything within this season, I thought both villains were pretty compelling in their own ways. It's a little silly, it's a little bombastic, it's very violent, but I like it a lot, Dragon. I really feel like I am one of those people that just very definitively thinks this is a you know what? I think my overall thesis statement on this, Dragon, and it's a big one. I think that this is as much of an improvement on season 2 for the Punisher as Luke Cage season 2 was a downgrade from season 1. Like, I'm saying, like, I was watching this and I couldn't believe how much I was enjoying this, Dragon. Maybe it's the low expectations going into it. That seems to be a running trend with me for sure. But yeah, this definitely has my thumbs up, for sure. And I would say it's easily top 5 Marvel Netflix seasons, easily, if not top 3 for me. Like, I'm really glowing about this thing. And of course, Dragon, before we get into your thesis statements, let's just mention off the top that we're doing this when we're doing this, because we did kind of drop off of the Marvel Netflix train after a bit. We're kind of catching up on the Marvel Netflix stuff as Marvel stuff is coming out, because they all kind of thematically sort of tie into each other in such weird ways. So, Dragon, with Punisher, for example, this is a show that is very rooted in military, and especially this season, we're going to see a lot of that. And of course, what comes out in just a little over 24 hours, Dragon, but your beloved Falcon Winter Soldier, aka the reason you got Disney Plus.
Yes.
So yes, we are doing this on the eve of a much more hyped about MCU military show, but hopefully doing it in conjunction with Falcon and Winter Soldier will kind of help to bring a spotlight to this one, because Dragon, I truly think this is absolutely the most underrated of the Marvel Netflix seasons. Absolutely. I mean, I think this was like I said, I don't want to say it's flawlessly executed, but you know what? The Punisher as a character by his very nature is messy. So in some ways, I kind of appreciate the flaws because of it. So I don't know, man. I am just absolutely optimistic on this thing. What's your take?
Well, I'll tell you. When it comes to season two, it's tricky, but I respect. I respect what they were trying to do. In response to the criticisms that many people had with season one, having too many plot lines, like of course Madani, or more stinging for me, Madani's mother. I hated Madani's mother in that show. We never need any of those scenes. I don't care about Madani's mother. But like the plot lines, like Madani, and like we had. Remember the biggest hole that season one had for me was it was a good story, but it kind of messed with the story. Was the veteran subplot? You had like the young veteran who was like kind of spiraling out. And
like you said, good story, but it felt like it was kind of disconnected from the rest of the stuff.
Right, so basically what they did here is, they trimmed things down to an A story and a B story. So I really respect what they went for here with season two, but at the end of the day, you look at both seasons, and they both kind of suffer from the similar thing. 13 episodes does damage pacing-wise to both seasons. I love things about this season, though. Make no mistake, I do love elements of this season that people just don't talk about. Just for me, on the whole, because I really do like season one, again, barring, again, some subplots that maybe, again, are good, but just don't belong in there. Season one, for me, is, I think season one's more consistent as, like, a narrative, as an arc, kind of where it goes. I think season one, because it's about, kind of, like, we reveal the whole Russo thing. We have that wonderful, the Steven Zurich episode that caps everything off with kind of our big kind of episode 8 of the Netflix equation with, the big, merry-go-round of it all. Like, that's fantastic. So, I continue. The show continues to feel very on brand for the tone of the Punisher comics. The Marvel Netflix Punisher is very Max. It's very it's very much kind of the very violent offshoot of the Punisher comics.
John Bernthal was, I still think, is maybe some of the most perfect casting the MCU's ever done, and that's saying something because the MCU is always spot on with their casting. But John Bernthal, Dragon, and you know this, like from the second I heard that man was cast as Frank Castle, I just was like, that's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. I couldn't imagine any other actor playing it.
Of course, and I love that this takes us into the next stage of the arc and the Punisher, as he's settling into the war zone mindset, the war journal war zone kind of mindset as a crusade.
I would love another season where he's fully in war zone mode. I'm not going to lie. I'm kind of disappointed we don't get that, but.
Yep. I mean, I wanted, I'll admit though, the big thing I got to get up front just so by the time we get into it, so I don't bury the lead too much, is, I wanted a great I went into the season wanting a great payoff to Jigsaw, which we teed up so wonderfully at the end of the first season. I didn't quite get that. I got some payoff, but not the payoff I expected or I was hoping for. And I mean, I did continue to get great action. The show is fantastic action. More importantly, Bernthal, as you mentioned, he's killing it literally and a lot.
I think this season is a lot more brutal than season one, and I respect the hell out of that choice, Dragon.
Well, you remember what season one did so cleverly, and I love that season one still did this, but season two does not have this go. It's kind of like the Stranger Things equation, where once we get to the end, we ramp it up, where the violence in season one builds up, so by the time we get to the penultimate and the ultimate episode, the most violent episodes in the whole season.
Of course, yeah.
Progressively gets in there, but now, almost like Stranger Things, now everybody's in the know and caught up. Season two is where, okay, we're full tilt now. We're there. We can be as violent as we want with the Punisher.
And I absolutely think that the violence in the season really lives up to the character in ways that season one just didn't, in my opinion.
So if I had like an analogy or kind of some vague metaphor for this season, it would be that it kind of scratches Billy Russo's face up, but doesn't quite finish the job like season one did for me. That's kind of where I'm at on season two, parallel with the plot of season two. That's where I'm at. I like it, do not love it nearly as much as season one, but that's just me.
All right, well, I'm glad to be the defender in this situation, Dragon, pun intended. because I'm not usually in this position, especially with the Marvel Netflix shows. So this is an interesting dynamic we got going on. So without further ado, let's why don't you break down the plot for us, Dragon?
Sure. Before I do that, I just want to get mention two things. One, because there's not really background I can get into, but the thing, just the reason we're talking about Punisher season 2 is that this was greenlit after season 1, and basically it got saved from the big Marvel Netflix cancellation wave because it was in production, it was already shooting. That saved its bacon along with Jessica Jones. They were very much they were in the middle of shooting or basically past the phase. Like Luke Cage was planning on a season 3, but they were just in like the board phase. They weren't in the writing phase. They weren't nearly as like, okay, well, we can't lose all that money.
Was for the best, all things considered.
Anyway, so that's a little bit of background I want to get in there. Also, we have in advance we had some commenters that I'm going to kind of feed into the conversation. Some friends, some live show friends. They got their opinions on the show, and we'll kind of feed that in when appropriate. So, all right.
All right, cool.
Okay, so the plot. So here's the plot in a nutshell. It's kind of the condensed version of Punisher Season 2. Okay, so Frank Castle becomes a drifter in order to figure out what's next for him after Season 1. He starts to settle down till one night in a bar, he sees a girl named Amy. Well, at this point, Rachel, but let's just skip to the good part. Amy. Named Amy, who's a street kid who got involved in a blackmail plot that has both a powerful and religious family gunning for her big time, which leads to essentially a road movie style adventure with Frank Castle as they deal with their pursuer, John Pilgrim. So meanwhile, Madani deals with Billy Russo, who woke up from his coma and now is on the loose, falling for his therapist. He's falling for his therapist. He's on the loose. He's stirring up all sorts of trouble. He's recruiting an army of Marines. Typical Tuesday. So Madani brings Frank Castle back to New York to deal with Russo. Novel idea. As we suffer through an amnesia plot, Frank Castle suffers through a death trap at the hands of Billy Russo. The Pilgrim, he closes in, which leads ultimately to a blunt emphasis on the blunt, a blunt and bloody showdown to save Amy, and basically, Billy Russo, pretty much everyone's seeking closure with Billy Russo.
Yep.
It all culminates in kind of a darkly happy ending as Frank Castle finally becomes the Punisher. That's pretty much the season in a nutshell.
All right. Well put, Dragon. Well put. So, let's get into the Punisher and the Pilgrim, Dragon. Let's talk through John Pilgrim. Dragon, I got to admit, I can totally see why people aren't on board with this guy. I liked him a lot. I'm sorry. This guy's kind of got some Anton Chigurh upside to me in terms of like him being just a really dark killer with a moral code, but at the same time, he does have some layers. He does have some sympathetic qualities, and even by the end of the season, Frank Castle sees enough good in him to at least let him live. So, Dragon, I got to admit, I really like what they did with this character. I thought the stuff with his religion was compelling enough. I thought that kind of like the breakdown in the hotel room was some bonkers shit, but at the same time, I was really I really kind of got into this guy's head. I don't know. I can see how it's not necessarily the plot line that people wanted, but I got into it for what it was worth.
Yeah, you're not alone, Tiki. I also really like John Pilgrim.
All right,
this season. And I think, honestly, here's the thing. I was going in hoping for Jigsaw, and I think John Pilgrim really stole Jigsaw's thunder for me, too. That's kind of what happened. I think John Pilgrim, he turned in the... By the way, so Josh Stewart plays John Pilgrim. Now, I know Josh Stewart from a very kind of small, but it's a vaguely memorable role. Did you recognize this actor?
No, I can't say that I did. He looked like... He kind of vaguely reminded me of Daniel Craig, but obviously I know it's not Daniel Craig.
No, it was so he was remember Bane's head lackey in Dark Knight Rises, like the guy who's like on the bridge telling the soldier like they can't cross the line, all that stuff. That
Oh
guy.
God, very, very, very vaguely.
But I'm just saying, like
It's that guy.
like Bane's lead guy. That's
Yeah,
that's him.
yeah. All right, all right.
So, fun fact about John Pilgrim. So, John Pilgrim's kind of an amalgam. He's mainly an original character for this show, but
I kind of figured, yeah.
He's inspired by a comic character, though. He's inspired by this character called Mennonite. Now, Mennonite, he was an
Sounds
Amish
like a Pokemon.
Essentially, he was an Amish hitman. Like his whole shtick was that he killed people with like hence that the end fight. He killed people like blunt Amish tools. Like he didn't use guns in the comic, but in this case, obviously, some compromises were made, and they kind of made him less Amish, more born again Christian. That essentially was kind of where they went. But absolutely, I mean, possibly the most fascinating character of season 2. I mean, we got a glimpse of his background in very interesting ways. He gets the crap beaten out of him, and he also kills all those guys in that bar. He is an ex-neo-Nazi. But
I really, really thought that everything about his about the way that they developed his character was very fascinating to me.
Yeah, he met a good woman, then the Schultz family kind of gave him a kind of new life and family, and that kind of he owes this debt to the Schultzes, and basically he found a way through all this, the whole born again Christian thing, to channel his hate, his previously just completely neo-Nazi hate, into something actually at least what's spun to him as constructive. Like, you're killing for a higher cause, and hence the code. Basically, his code is measured. It's like a code of restraint. That's the better way of putting it. It's like a code of restraint. Like, you only kill who you need to kill.
And of course, as you can probably guess, that's a pretty great mirror of Frank.
Yeah, so you look at this season, you look at our two villains, which essentially is our A story and B story, kids. That's pretty much how we're breaking this down. We're talking about all the A story stuff here with the John Pilgrim. And so I looking at it on the rewatch, this is the first time we rewatched it for our little sit down here.
This is the first time I watched it.
Yes.
I want to establish that right off the bat. So yeah, this was fresh for me, Dragon.
Kind of a pattern of what we do these days. But
right.
Yeah. But so if you kind of look at it in terms of our villains and how they parallel Frank Castle, I would say that John Pilgrim parallels Frank Castle where Jigsaw parallels the Punisher.
That's a good way to put it. I could see that.
As you know, they have a man here he's a great parallel for Frank. He's using violence to see and save his family, and his wife, basically her last wish is, as she's on her deathbed, is to see her husband before she goes, which tragically he's unable to do.
Mm-hmm.
He's unstoppable because of that drive and the principles that he kind of lives by, of kind of serving a higher cause. And again, I love that he has there's a respect and a menace there. Like my favorite little bit with John Pilgrim, it's a small bit, is when Madani, he approaches Madani to ask the leader where the Punisher and the girl are. And he has no gun at this point. At least he's not pulling it out, I guess. And Madani's drawing her weapon on him, and basically she takes his picture. But when she takes his picture, he removes his hat.
Yeah, that was an awesome moment. I'm glad you brought that up.
With a smile, that's what I'm saying. That's what's great about John Pilgrim. The whole thing about too of
he's got such a code, Dragon, and I always think that the best villains have codes. That's such a great way to.
This is going to be a really kind of a really up the ladder comparison here, but it's we do the same thing with the Kingpin all the time with this character. I mean, there's a bit of a Thanos-like quality in that Infinity War Thanos. He's very complimentary towards people and everyone.
Sure, yeah.
Where I love the bit where he goes to that sheriff's station and he says, "Did you take an oath?" And yes, before God. You swore the oath of God. I can respect that because he did the same thing. It's great. So yeah, he's just I love that. Also, one other bit then was we'll kind of back that a little bit here, is I love that he found. Unfortunately, this bit has no payoff, but it was always a really interesting bit on the rewatch. Is that he found in the bar Frank Castle's wedding ring, and of course, given his own character, kind of his whole character motivations.
Sure.
I thought it was kind of interesting. Kind of found the wedding ring, which is kind of very symbolic to the story, and they both are dealing with the loss of their wives in this season. And they have the whole self-punishment thing, in private, during his failures in ways.
Yes.
He's whipping himself. Yeah.
All right, so let's double back around to Amy, Dragon.
Well, sure, and then we should probably talk about Frank too. But yeah, let's talk about Amy.
Well, I mean, we will get to Frank, but I feel.
Tiki. Let's be frank, but we'll get to that. Okay, so Amy,
She is an interesting character because I feel like throughout most of the season, like throughout the first 2/3 of the season, let's say, she really kind of got on my nerves. I was like, oh God, what are they doing with this rapscallion kid who's just kind of like on the run and she doesn't listen to authority and she's stealing Madani's credit card, man. Come on.
well, you know what? That's what Madonna gets for shooting poor Brett Mahoney. She gets her credit card stolen.
Fair enough, fair enough.
She shot her boy from Daredevil. Come on.
But Dragon, I will admit that throughout the last third of the season, I totally got what they were doing with her character. I don't know if you know anything about the Last of Us franchise, but
I think I know the premise. So
you know the basics. So it very much kind of like began to feel like a Joel and Ellie kind of dynamic. And I really appreciated that, with Joel and Ellie, like Joel, of course, spoiler alert, who, for anyone who hasn't played the first 5 minutes of The Last of Us, Joel's daughter gets killed in the opening scene of that game. And then Ellie very much is kind of like in a similar way where with Frank in most of the season, he's kind of just like, this kid, I need to protect her, but she's a pain in my ass. And then as the game goes on and as the season goes on, you really kind of latch on to and of course, Frank, he needs something like this in his life, like this is a connection that he absolutely needs. So Dragon, honestly, in retrospect, I feel like them making her kind of a brat in the early episodes almost kind of like makes it more realistic in terms of the father-daughter bond that they develop. That they don't just instantly start off on the best of terms.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Amy for me, and I was wondering if you were going to have this turning point when you were watching it, because I heard a little bit of the whole, she stole my daddy's credit card.
That really stuck in my craw for some reason. Maybe but not just the act, but the fact that we made like a queen montage out of it.
But also, even Frank called her out on it before she presented pizza. But still, it's like, what are you doing?
This woman put you up in her home.
You steal her credit card. So, the thing with Amy, though, for me, is that, especially on the rewatch, too, is that I find Amy has this thing where she grows on you, but maybe not fast enough, because it takes till episode...
It's not fast enough. I will totally admit that.
It takes till episode 6, but let's just say 5, because the credit card thing happens in 5, but they're playing cards with each other, so it's kind of there, when they're playing cards, they're doing like the whole little card trick thing.
Uh-huh.
The one-eyed Jack, which, by the way, is a Daredevil reference.
By the way, for some reason, I've heard a lot of people cite that scene in particular as a criticism of, this season's too slow, nothing happens. And as far as I'm concerned, Dragon, what the fuck? The season is paced great. Every episode has a killer fucking action sequence in it. What show are you watching? Season 1 was the one that was slow. And B, that moment is a great bit of character building. Anyways, go ahead.
It is. I mean, for me, it really clicks. Again, definitely by episode 6, the opening of 6 always, I think, is where it truly clicked. I mean, the card game was the beginning, where, she's... we have. I love her and the Punisher. Punishing the pedophile photographer.
That
I
was
love
great.
that scene so much. To use the film lab, use the dark room, which of course makes great plot sense. That's why they're there, and also gives Punisher a chance to. I gotta tell you, look at Daredevil season 2 when the Punisher kicks the crap out of pedophiles. It's awesome. I don't know why.
Oh yeah.
It's just great.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, it makes total sense with his character that would be, of course, anyone would be, down to kick someone like that's ass. But with Frank Castle, given his history, that especially, it's a perfect recipe for sure.
Certainly. And obviously, Amy, she kind of fills, there's some lovely things in the season with Amy where, they have this scene where they're talking about what would it be like if Lisa had grown up, like his daughter, Lisa. And, there's really some sweet stuff like that, and basically cementing Amy as the
surrogate. Giving you hell right now.
Yep. You'd be in jail.
I could see that, too. I could see Frank just going way too far with a boyfriend.
God. Oh, of course. I can imagine him like in a cardigan too.
It would be a more intimidating car conversation than Tom Holland and Michael Keaton.
Oh yeah, more absolutely. Well, just given the fact that Spider-Man and the Punisher have interacted, imagine if that's how they first met.
Dude,
Imagine if it was
I want to see Spider-Man and Punisher interact. I still want to see that on the table, Dragon. After this season, I do kind of like, obviously Charlie Cox is Daredevil and Vincent D'Onofrio as Wilson Fisk are number 1 and number 2 on the table to return. Dragon, at this point, lock down the Punisher is like a solid number 3 on my wish list for Marvel Netflix crossover.
Well, again, the rumor mill has been looking favorably upon Bernthal and Charlie Cox, and assumedly if you get Cox,
I need Bernthal in the grander MCU, Dragon, especially if the Deadpool rumors are true, when they are going to have an R-rated side of the MCU. Man, I'm sorry, I'm geeking out about this character.
But that's the thing. I mean, he's even taking the card game thing as another example here. I love that basically Amy's role additionally is that she teaches Frank Castle finesse, which essentially is something he really puts into practice when they deal with the Schultzes later. Remember the whole offering him the do you want to either your son cleans up the mess and exposes you for the horrible people that you are, or you kill yourselves. That's finesse. That he learned essentially by proxy of the girl. And in return, he teaches her how to protect herself with the whole, one of the great scenes of bonding between the two of them. The whole how do you take a gun, the whole using the gun, and that beautiful. This is what I'm talking about. I'm going to coin one of our commenters here. So, the Day Ghost from all these guys are from the Captain Logan show, by the way, kind of our live stream. But so the Day Ghost said season 2 is more a Punisher show than season 1, but not perfect, which is very fair, obviously.
I totally feel the same way. But here's the thing, Dragon. I honestly, I would like someone to point me toward, and I'm sure there are comic book stories that are, but as I kind of implied in my thesis, I think the Punisher, by his very nature, is kind of a messy character. You know what I mean? So I would be inclined to find a Punisher story that is perfect by that very definition, because Frank Castle, I feel like as a person, is kind of full of contradictions. That's kind of what makes him him.
So, I could point you some really weird Punisher stories too.
I'm sure you could.
I mean, just his interaction with Luke Cage I don't think would hold up well.
Oh no! Oh God! I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
Yeah, it's really weird. Anyway, but no. So seriously, so again, my point is that the tone again, the series has always had a great tone of the Punisher, but it really leans into it heavy with kind of the black comedy aspect of the Punisher. Where, for example, we have this it's a sweet yet violent scene where the Punisher, he teaches her how to shoot, and we pay this off. We're in a hallway. She after there's like a $5 million bounty on him. A guy's about to kill her. She does the little gun move, and then she shoots the guy. And she feels horrible about it. But Frank comes by and says, I shot him. She feels terrible. She says, no, I've killed him. Says, no, you didn't kill him. You shot him because it was either you or him. Don't feel bad about it. This is no, you shot him.
He shoots the guy. There, you see, I shot him. I killed him. I killed him. See, it's all good.
See, again, it's kind of again, it's sweet. Yet there's that black comedy in there. Just And again, that's purely the that's the Punisher Max comics right there. It's like the Garth Ennis and Garth Ennis, the guy who did The Boys, by the way. So you can kind of see where the
totally.
Garth Ennis pretty much revolutionized the tone of the Punisher in a big way. He's the one who basically did Punisher Uncensored. That was his big claim to fame. Anyway, so but yes, I mean Amy, she's also that, and in the comic, so Amy was very much, they aged her up for this, as you can probably guess. She was a very simple story, Punisher bonded like a little girl, and they kind of try to work that now and again, look at Punisher Warzone, hey, look at Punisher bond with the little girl, isn't that cute? So it's kind of like a little kind of nod to that. But yeah, Amy served a purpose. I think we should have been on board with her more by either episode 2 in a perfect world, but definitely by 3. But we didn't get there till 5.
I wasn't fully on board with her until episode 7 or 8. I've got to be honest with you.
No, I hear you. I don't fault you. I mean, again, I think the pedophile thing really, I think, helped her in a sense. But
Sure.
Okay. All right, so let's circle back to should we talk about Frank or the Schultzes, just to kind of get that out of the way?
Let's talk. I mean, let's be frank, Dragon. Let's be frank.
Okay. So
So yeah, I love the first episode, Dragon. I love that in both of the seasons we've had this kind of like opening, kind of almost film noir-esque, like, what if Frank Castle was taking on a different life? And what if he was kind of succeeding at it until he has like a one bad day, if you will.
Yep. Even an episode title this season.
I know, right? And Dragon, I love it. I love how how just like we kind of get a glimpse. We get a glimpse of Frank Castle leading a vaguely normal life and having a chance at it. And at first I thought that the relationship stuff and him bonding with the kid and everything, at first I thought that was like happening like a little too quick, and then it gets quickly abandoned, obviously. But then I feel what brought it all back was his conversation with Curtis about it, like how it was like, yeah, it was like kind of like a fleet, like for a whole 5 minutes, I felt like a normal person, like it's supposed to feel fleeting. It's fleeting to Frank in the moment. And so I really do appreciate how slowly we start things off. And then I think the one of the best episodes of the season, Dragon. Let's just the police station episode.
You mean the sheriff's department thing?
Yeah, right? The sheriff's station. Yeah. God damn, that episode was fucking fantastic. That was a hell of a bottle episode.
That it was. I thought you might like that one.
That was really where, like, I was enjoying the season. I was like, okay, like I can see where this is going, like, But then when that episode hit, I was like, okay, this is definitely the Punisher show I was wanting from season 1. Like, this is fantastic. So yeah, Frank, I just feel like is on a great kind of journey of like, there is a lot of humanity in him, but at the same time, he knows that he can never really, really fully embrace that humanity. And it's always just kind of like at an arm's length away. And I feel like the ending, as silly as the ending is, very silly in some regards, Dragon. It is. But still, the ending does kind of like, kind of revolve around the idea that he will never, that he's in his element as the Punisher. Like, he's very much like Frank Castle is as much the Punisher as Bruce Wayne is Batman,
Yeah, see, I really love. I'm just to echo some of your points there. I mean, earlier on, I love how Bill Bixby-esque it is, like Punisher, like Frank Castle, the Drifter, and it's kind of a beautiful idea if you think about it. See, now that he essentially got a clean slate with the whole Pete Castiglione ID, with from the government trying to cover up the whole Punisher doing all this stuff.
Was that the fake name he used for Micro's family?
Yeah, he's always had that. He's always used that name.
That's
basically,
what I thought,
when Madani essentially wrote him out of the narrative, for like a kind of a cover up of sorts. He went back to his identity. He just kind of uses now and again. Which, by the way, Castiglione, that's his original immigrated family name from all the way all the years back. The original Castle family. So
Gotcha.
But anyway, I love this whole. Of course, I'm a sucker for the old Drifter story because of my love of the Incredible Hulk and Bill Bixby being like the ultimate Bruce Banner, even though his name's not Bruce. The one thing that sticks in my craw is that show's so good.
Especially the reason why they named him that, which we won't even get into because it's so stupid.
It is. It's dumb. Anyway, but yeah, so I love basically the reason he's doing this though is that it's this great arc of he has this clean slate and he's essentially with his family avenged because we closed the book on the whole the conspiracy behind the Castle family murder and everything, like why or like how did they get caught in the crossfire. It's a little coincidental. We kind of solved all that for Daredevil and in Punisher season 1 put the nail in that coffin. And it's basically taking a road trip to get to know the country that he devoted so much of his life to protecting, which is kind of an interesting idea. He's basically looking for what's next. Mm-hmm. And in doing so, he just can't quail, even though he's found happiness for like 5 minutes, he can't quail, the Punisher in him because he just looked at that. I've always loved the highlight. If you look at Bernthal's performance, the reason you can tell it's a good performance, you look at his eyes, you can see him like darting back and forth all the time. You can see the wheels turning, like the instincts and the marine instincts of the Punisher. And again, remember, the taking the Punisher is that I can't remember full long, but I want to say that bullet is still in his head too. We still get the symbol of he was shot in the head during that massacre. which is basically put him also like a perpetual fight or flight instinct in a sense, and he's always got that going on. So it's like he just can't quail that part of himself, that marine instinct to protect the innocent with a lot of violence. And as a way of channeling his rage through kind of in his mind, kind of a healthy way. Mm-hmm. And I mean, like by the end of the story, ultimately where we get with that ending, at the end of the story, he realizes, it's kind of like Cap at the end of Age of Ultron. It's like he's not the guy who went into the ice. He doesn't want the same things that guy wanted. Like there's no replacing my family. I'm this now. I'm the Punisher.
Sure.
But yeah, so again, just really, really good stuff with Bernthal's performance and just like kind of Frank Castle's story. I really loved like this kind of like how we kind of went about just getting him from point A to point B. It doesn't feel like the same hat trick again, which I can't think it could have been really easily. It's like, well, Punisher's just going around doing stuff, and he kind of is, but it's going somewhere.
I feel like the arc this season was like I said, he's kind of like accepted the fact that he needs to be the Punisher. But at the same time, he's also opened himself up to be a little bit more human in the process. Whereas his arc in season 1 was pretty much mostly just built out of revenge and not much else.
Yeah, they did something I really loved where we kind of learned we learned this in the hospital scene with Karen. So I'm gilding the lily a little bit here, but there's other stuff to talk about in that scene. Is that they inverted my favorite Punisher run ever is the Jason Aaron Punisher. It has like the really sick and twisted Bullseye, and I always talk about when we bring up Bullseye. And there's a reveal in that story essentially that one of the last things the Punisher said that Frank Castle said to his wife before they died was quite heartbreaking, and essentially that he feels more like the Punisher than he does Frank Castle, essentially. And basically it's like he doesn't want to stop. But in here we kind of we invert it where Frank Castle, he did not want to go back to war. He told her like the best news she could ever hear, and then it all was taken away from him. Like Frank Castle did actually die with that bullet in his head. It was all like everything just completely ended for him. So there is no going back.
Sure.
Right. So the Schultzes are terrible people.
Yeah. I don't have a lot.
Actors, but they suck.
I don't have a lot to say about them, Dragon. They're kind of just on the sidelines, like, ooh, we're the big bad rich family.
Yeah. It's just
like honestly, I don't think they handled the characters very well, especially considering how much they come into focus in the final 2 episodes. I feel like they're left on the sidelines quite a bit.
Yeah, you're right. And again, they're kind of, they're mainly the reason, okay, why do we have John Pilgrim going after him so hard? And
right.
Get John Pilgrim, well, their religious family took him in. Like, okay, I guess that's it then. So they're the plot reason for John Pilgrim. That's mainly their role in this whole season. They have to give us a reason, why is Amy on the run? They're all plot.
At the very least, they don't take up a lot of screen time. It's like, they're there, they serve their purpose, but they don't really intrude on things too much.
I like how they got really nice actors to play really horrible people, though. They got Corbin Bernstein, they got Annette O'Toole, Superman's mom.
Oh God!
From Smallville, or Lana Lang from the Richard Lester film, depending on your preference. But we took also Jeff Pickles' mom from Kidding.
Oh no! Oh God!
We took her and we just. They're holding Pilgrim's sons hostage. They essentially kept him from his wife with their stupid cause of like, hey, our son has kissed another man and he's a senator. We can't have that pass because even as progressive as times get, let's face it, we need those certain votes.
Yeah.
And I love the one thing I want to mention is that because we already mentioned the whole Punisher giving him like a decision, like giving Anderson a choice of like either suicide or not. Their son was an interesting case where their son was actually a good person. Their son, he was kind of an innocent in all this, but all this was being done in service of his future. And Curtis kind of got through him. They did the right thing there and kind of like set things right in an interesting way.
Yeah, I feel like everything kind of wrapped up in a pretty satisfying way with them. I did like the bullet ultimatum.
Yeah. All right, so So let's see. Oh, I mean, also just before we transition, like, do you want to talk just some of the action, like, kind of in our Ace story is really cool, like anything, like the gym fight, for example.
I mean, I don't really have. Like I said, I think the biggest highlight for me is probably the assault on Precinct 13 episode.
Right.
Um, but no, it was all great. It was all really well done. Yeah, like I said, I just think the fact that we were really able to go brutal with the violence really helped this season out a lot because, like you said, season one kind of like built to the brutality, but with this season, I feel like it felt more on brand with the Punisher. The fact that we were really pulling no punches with the violence from the get go.
Yeah, and I love that. I mentioned the gym, Kazan's gym, because I think it's one of the most impressive set pieces. And also, in case you're curious, the Punisher has a cast on his hand because John Bernthal actually broke his hand during the season. They had to write that in there.
Nice, nice.
So I mean, I'm sure like this is after like he healed or before I assume it's after he healed or whatever with the whole like now he doesn't have the cast on during that gym fight, but still impressive fight. Also kind of a throwback to the the Thomas Jane Punisher, which is based on that Welcome Back Frank comic where he's fighting the giant Russian guy. But like, how can we make that? How can we do that but not do it over again? We're gonna have a whole gym full of big Russian guys. And we have the tension of a broken hand. And also, let's throw Turk Barrett in there for good measure. It's
Turk Barrett. Yeah, Turk Barrett was very satisfying in this in the one episode he gets.
Now, if I recall, and I don't know if I can't remember if you know what I mean. He probably shows up. I was going to say this might be
Jones season 3.
Either that or Iron Fist. He shows up one more time in one of them, if not both. But I want to say this is like the last time we see Turk Barrett, but I'm sure he comes back at least once more. So the point being, it's one of the final times we gotta count our blessings with old Turk Barrett.
Oh, Turk Barrett was absolutely, I think, one of the most successful bits of continuity with the Marvel MCU, the Netflix stuff.
I'm always terrified when Turk Barrett pops up in The Punisher because all the other shows I know he's safe in, but not The Punisher. Because The Punisher, it's always the tension, this will be, I guess, a good transition point, is that the tension with Turk Barrett is that Punisher usually doesn't have recurring villains, as you can probably guess. If he has recurring villains, they have to be really, really tough hombres. And last I checked, Turk Barrett, not a tough hombre.
Right.
It's like the only reason he keeps Turk Barrett around is because he can connect him to other bad guys. It's the only reason that guy's alive.
Yeah.
Right. So that brings us to essentially the Punisher's archenemy, which is very rare, as you can imagine, with our B plot.
All right, let's reconstruct the jigsaw, Dragon.
Yeah. So of course, as I mentioned, this to me, now we've entered the dicey part of season 2. The Billy Russo jigsaw stuff, where for me it was the most anticipated part of season 2, because again, I was so hyped after that Steven Zurich finale. And it's the whole reason you do season 2, because that's the big hanging chad. Where we've done the Punisher story, had a really nice ending, and yet we know he's going to wake up out of that coma at some point, and he's going to have a messed up face, because that's how that goes. And honestly, at the end of the day, I like it once he and Frank reunite, and I do appreciate we have like a build up. Like they don't meet each other until episode 7. Maybe a hair too long. They give him Kingpin's introduction in Daredevil is perfect. It's 3 episodes, and then there he is in wonderful build up. That's just the right amount of time. 7 episodes may have been too long.
So I have both pros and cons with Billy. Honestly, one of my big pros, Dragon, I don't know if you're going to agree with me on this, but I legitimately thought that the stuff with his therapist was well done, because I thought it was a pretty decent mirror to Madani's plotline in season 1. And honestly, I think the therapist was one of the more compelling characters of the season, and arguably she was even more evil than Billy was, because she was much more kind of cognitive of what she was doing, whereas with Billy, obviously you can kind of, to a certain write it up to the crazy factor. I feel like she was a good kind of like low key pulling the strings villain.
Let me put it this way: when it comes to Dumont, like Krista Dumont, the therapist. I mean, this is going to sound really harsh, but
oh boy,
yeah, she's I love her payoff. I love when we learn about her background. I love her fate at the end. I love that. I want to be clear. I love that. But from the beginning, it really feels like, especially I realize, feel
Is
like,
your problem just like, for God's sakes, woman, this guy's gonna kill ya?
I mean, in part, it's like it's mainly she's kind of comes across like a Harley Quinn knockoff at the start, and
I guess.
but again, it's an effective ending, and her background
Yeah.
is very sad. I like her back. Her background, the idea that her father essentially did a murder suicide, or like, in a divorce. Like, hey, I'm going to take you away from your mother because if I can't have you, no one can. And mid hug, jumps out the window with the girl, and she survives. Watches her father die, and basically there were some suicide attempts. It's really dark stuff, and that's why she helps veterans. That's a great backstory for what gets her to that point. And I mean, it makes me buy a little bit more while she's investing in Billy. But I mean, when she crosses the line, there's like a whole relationship and everything. And honestly, if you look at that relationship, Billy really treats her like crap at the start of that relationship. I don't know.
No, I definitely think for this plot line there is an air of like, all right, like what woman would put up with all this shit? It's a little unrealistic. But like I said, Dragon, I appreciate the manipulation. I appreciate the fact that, like, with her, it's almost kind of just about, like, she knows she can control Billy. And I honestly wish they went further with that. I wish that, because I do think the one thing that she does that is genuinely, like, fucking evil is the big setup in I believe it's episode 10. And that to me kind of like cemented her as like kind of a memorable antagonist.
I think that's our common ground, Tiki, in that I wish had we gotten the sinister like string puller thing earlier in that story. That was more. I don't think that was really. I think they were getting to that once the relationship everything was forged, but it's kind of a hard sell in getting there. But once we get there, it's great.
Sure.
That is really sinister what she does there. I mean, for sure, yeah.
Yeah, it was dark. Okay, let's see. Now the part with Billy Russo that I really like. I don't not enjoy it because I think it's enjoyably fun, but I think it's stupid. Just my boys.
Oh boy, it's kind of like Nuke all over again.
It absolutely reminded me of Nuke, Dragon. It absolutely reminded me of Nuke.
Only
my boys.
Here's like he says it's more like he usually says brothers instead of boys, but it's pretty much the same thing. That's what I'm saying. It's like that he has a different word, but it's the same. It's the same problem.
Okay. I will say this. I like the idea of Billy Russo recruiting Marines and and Army veterans and whatever into an army. Like I like that. I like that in concept. I just think what they do with it is fucking stupid. Just the whole like even the genesis of the idea, like, hey, what are we gonna do? I don't know. Let's rob some banks and shit.
Well, hey, we banded together. We stopped a car from being taken. Let's rob a bank next, and let's rob all the banks.
Like that really just escalates quickly, and it kind of turns into like the like the Shredder gang from Ninja Turtles or something.
Yeah, here's the thing. In part, I like. Okay, so let me just the Jigsaw thing overall, just in terms of like how they adapted it, in terms of how things kind of came about with tying into the recruitment. So, okay, so we gave him this mask, which essentially we drew like a jigsaw pattern on.
Thematically, I like the mask. I can totally understand why people are pissed about it because it looks cheap, but I feel like thematically it makes a lot of sense, and I feel like once you know the symbolism behind it, it's very effective.
Well, that's the thing, Tiggy. I don't mind the mask at all. What I mind is what's under the mask, which is very little scarring. Okay, now just to be completely fair, okay, I want to be fair.
The funny thing is, I kept hearing about how very little scarring there is, and I gotta tell you, like, maybe it was just kind of like my expectations being super low, but I was like, oh, well, it's not a ton, but I mean, shit, I wouldn't want to have that, like that seems like it'd be an inconvenience to me. I mean, it doesn't look super villainesque, but
okay, here's just to broach the scar thing. So yeah. I get the unavoidable logic of Jigsaw without a mob doctor. We didn't go the full mobster. And classically in the comics, classically in the comics, Jigsaw is a mobster. We did not go that route here. We reinvented Jigsaw for the show, which we made him Marine and everything, which is better, which is a more interesting idea. I want to be clear, making him Making him Marine was a great call.
Uh-huh.
Like, friends with Frank and all that. That was great because again, he's always had the really, he's the Punisher's arch enemy, but it's always been how does this one mobster not get killed by the Punisher every encounter? So they kind of found a way to circumvent that in the show, which makes sense. And with the whole reason why Jigsaw looks so bad is he probably had like a mob doctor or something, just that did a terrible job, more like comic book logic. So again, that's why he looks as terrible as he does in the comic. But in the grounded sense that we have in these Netflix shows, well, if he's arrested, then he would have he would have had a good surgery, which means minimal scarring.
Yeah.
So even with the mask, it's ultimately it's just not the same. And I wish, at the very least, what I was really hoping for, where we were going with the mask, my biggest hope is that even if it was minimal scarring, that we did like a Dark Knight Returns Two-Face thing, where the moment he got his reflection, given how traumatized he is by mirrors now too, the moment he looks at a reflection, he sees worse scarring. Like, we reveal like a horrible, like, just like we don't like.
Oh, that'd be an interesting way to do it. That scarring is in his head. Yeah.
Yes. Either that, or even like, imagine this: every time he took off the mask, like, to the world, barely any scars. Like, almost like a Doctor Doom thing. Like, it's like a little scar. It's fine. But to him,
good call.
Like, he either sees like a really cool, like, kind of like a Bill Corso makeup job or something. Like, he sees like all like scars and like basically classic Jigsaw. Like, basically the mask like made on his face, or perhaps he just sees. I mean, I guess possibly the cheaper route, but still effective would have been like he looks at the mirror every time he sees a mirror. He sees like the fresh wound, like a cutback to season more. He sees like the bloody face. He just sees,
right,
like,
fresh wound.
Like, either of those to me is I think that would have been satisfying to more parties ultimately. I mean, maybe that's just me. I don't know, I just wish it was more psychological scarring. Any way you slice, just wish we dived more into that psychology more than this, like, and this is going to sound really sparing, but it's just like, it's a lot of talking. And I know therapy is a lot of talking, but I just wish it was more visually and emotionally dynamic.
Again, at this point, I've kind of gotten used to Marvel Netflix stuff being talkathon, so that didn't really bother me.
That's not that I don't mean like that. I'm not saying talking's bad or dialogue scenes are bad. It's just like I wanted something a little more like, Kingpin.
Being in other Netflix series, it's bothered me more than it bothers me here.
Well, I mean, for example, you look at Kingpin. Visually, that is dynamic as all get out. I mean, we set up Rabbit in a snowstorm. You get it. Like, we should have Billy Russo. That mirror should be his Rabbit in a snowstorm. That's what I want. But Anyway, let's see. So again, the whole arch enemy thing. So again, he is. We're doing other classic Jigsaws. I liked we put him in the fancy jacket once he kind of that weird scene on the bus where that guy was just really mean. Just
right.
Just really mean guy. And Billy just kills him off screen because why show the exciting stuff in that moment? Anyway, so he kind of wears this jacket. It's very Jigsaw-esque, kind of the old school like mobster with the furry kind of thing at the top. I like they kind of has that jacket through the whole season. We have the mask, and Jigsaw is kind of a recruiter, so we kind of have that with the henchman, the whole veteran recruitment thing. So again, all that is kind of on brand for Jigsaw, and the big death trap.
Just what they do with it that's stupid, Dragon. I like the idea. I just don't like the actual ooh, let's rob some banks and shit.
Exactly. And also, I mean, just to be fair, I like Jigsaw the bank robber, but right, how we get there is really weird. Like, that's really abrupt. I like Jigsaw robbing banks. That's classic Jigsaw. We blend the mobster with the veteran because we've taken away his whole Anvil security team. He's kind of like a more rank and file sort of like kind of found version of that here, as he's kind of look, big question. Okay, I'm gonna throw this at you. Given our constant talk of Spider-Man 3. How did you feel about the amnesia plot with Jigsaw in this?
I'm glad you bring that up, Dragon. I honestly thought that it was more well handled than most amnesia plots are. I got to be honest with you.
Okay.
What I like about it is that it kind of explores the psychology of he can't remember the bad shit that's been done to him or the bad shit that he's done, but at the same time he's horrified and haunted by the aftermath of it. And Dragon, that's an interesting, because usually with amnesia plots, it's with Harry Osborn is the prime example. It's just he doesn't understand anything. He's like, I know that face. It's just like,
hey, basketball.
Right. It's like they're like with Billy Russo, it's like he gets that he's a bad person. He gets that shit has been done bad to him, and he might deserve it. And that's where I think the difference is between that and most Amnesia storylines. Because most Amnesia storylines are basically just like, okay, here's a blank slate for the character. And this very much, like I said, with the aftermath and him picking up the pieces, it's very much not a blank slate. If anything, the amnesia kind of like drives him more and more crazy. I don't know. Does that make sense, Dragon? I actually think
it makes
I think
total
they worked
sense.
with it quite well, in my opinion.
It makes total sense. I mean, I think they handled. If you're going to do an amnesia play, I think they probably. Let me tell you what I like about the amnesia thing. I like that it all ties into everyone kind of talking to Frank about, man, you really should have killed. Basically saying, you beat him up so badly, he can't even remember the bad stuff that he did.
Right.
And I like how that angle of the story works with the amnesia, where basically what Punisher has done, kind of sadistically, unintentionally, but sadistically, he's kind of cursed him to a very karmic fate. He's kind of put him in Frank Castle, the newly kind of widowed and family widowed. I guess orphaned. I don't know what the term is on that, but anyway, newly defamilied Frank Castle.
Yeah.
Basically, it was like, hey, your family's alive, but they all hate you now, and you don't know why.
Right.
All your military brothers, like, you're still buddies with the man who did this to you, but you don't know it yet. And the government's covered it up, so you really don't know why. And everything, and so that's kind of in that sense. That's the sell of the amnesia plot form. Is that Frank took everything away, and then it frames this interesting question of what gets us to Punisher forming his crusade at the end, where, hey, this is why the Punisher shouldn't have an archenemy. This is why he should kill everyone. It's not Batman. There's no rogues. There's no true rogues gallery for the Punisher.
Yeah,
because when the Punisher doesn't kill someone, you have all these poor people like Madani, and more importantly, poor Curtis, man. Poor Curtis having to look over his shoulder and everything.
Definitely have to bring up Curtis and Madani, because I feel like they both have some pretty fantastic stuff this season.
Exactly. It affirms why Punisher needs to kill versus the compromise, which leads to the victim suffering because they remember, even if Billy doesn't. So so let's we got to talk about Curtis, man.
Yeah, Curtis is kind of an MVP this season. I really think he does. Like, I thought he was an MVP in season 1 as well, but he didn't get a ton of stuff to do. And in this season, they really have him on the front lines, and I really love how he works as kind of like a shoulder angel to Frank in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, Curtis, he was always kind of this, but especially here, he's very much kind of the Sam Wilson to Frank Castle's Cap.
Absolutely.
And I'm not just using that as like
Curtis and Sam Wilson. Their characters honestly have a lot of kind of mirror each other in a lot of ways.
I mean, the coolest thing about that comparison, of course, is the fact they both have they both started with like a veteran support group.
They both started with a veteran support group. They both have issues with their. Oh, I'm sorry, that's Rhodey that has issues with his legs, right?
Right, but I mean, if you want to kind of make it a trifecta, and also maybe a little bit of a Rhodey thing as well, with the whole Rhodey's kind of dealing with like a handicap now, as is Curtis. So again, there's kind of like also a military character, so it fits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think that he has a great role throughout the season. I really think that, and one of the things I really like about his role is how he's able to play good cop with a lot of the people that Frank interrogates, and that kind of adds a different dynamic to the brutality of the Frank Castle stuff.
I think the most effective, I think you'd agree with this, the most effective Curtis scene in the whole season is when he's on the rooftop. He's basically a sniper on a rooftop, and he's basically trying to cover Frank 6. And he has to, again, he's dealing with Russo's henchmen, who are all veterans. And not just veterans, for the most part, veterans from his support group that have just kind of gone awry, that have been corrupted by Russo. And he warns them, hey guys, man, don't make me shoot to kill. So anyway, so they all run away except one guy who had to shoot in the leg to get him to stop and deliver his point there. That guy's I'm pretty sure he bleeds out and dies. And Curtis,
Yeah, he bleeds out and dies. Curtis holding his hand as he does so,
which is just it's tragic, and especially for Curtis having trying to save these guys. And I just love that Curtis. You feel so much sympathy for Curtis. He just wants it all to end. He had Billy Russo died, he wouldn't be looking over his shoulder. He'd be having his happy little relationship. He keeps telling his girlfriend that it's like the Breaking Bad thing. He keeps telling him, Hank, I want to do the stakeout with you, but it's my stomach, man.
Right. Yeah.
No bueno. Buenos hermanos today, friend.
All right. And finally, Madani Dragon, she's not perfect. She's definitely not perfect. But I genuinely think that the bad ingredient with her was not the character herself, but as you mentioned up top, the mother. I think without the mother, this character works a hell of a lot better. I honestly think that there's some really interesting stuff they do with her. I feel like morally, she's one of the most ambiguous characters on the show, and they do some interesting storytelling there. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Madani was always it's kind of like Dupinder from Deadpool, where there's a kind of a signature with a character. Deadpool has the supporting characters that kind of come into his stories that he kind of remembers. There's a fun dynamic where Punisher has that too, with like a law enforcement character of some kind, and usually a female law enforcement character. Like Welcome Back, Frank, I'm pretty sure has a character like Madani in it. If not Madani herself, I don't think it was Madani. But that's the same. It's kind of like the usual trope with them. So Madani's always had that going for her, which, again, good character, but she's no Ray Nadeem, let's be honest.
Nadeem!
But, I mean, yeah,
she's no Ray Nadeem, but I feel like she's way closer to a Ray Nadeem than she was in Season 1, Dragon. I mean, I would gladly give her the credit of a B grade Ray Nadeem.
But no, you're right. You hit it right on the head. Is that the problem is she's always been kind of anchored by these other characters in her in her story, in her subplots, where she's basically it's a lot of bureaucracy within the bureau or her mother. That was kind of the thing that dragged her down in Season 1. And here, the only thing that drags her down for me, I think it is a vast improvement, and I like pairing her with Mahoney, by the way. I wish he treated Mahoney better at times. Don't
Mahoney
shoot him.
Gets a lot of action this season too. Surprisingly, that's there is. I forgot how much natural crossover stuff there was in the Netflix stuff.
I forgot about the ambulance thing with Mahoney, so I was I was quite riveted. But no, seriously, of course, we all love Brett Mahoney. Think about this, Steve. Mahoney's art. I'll get back to Madani series with Mahoney.
Okay, no problem.
Mahoney, his arc has been coming around. He's been coming around the Punisher. He's had this arc coming around the Punisher ever since Daredevil Season 2. Because remember, he had the big moment with Daredevil and the whole arresting, the Punisher. And he's always had pointed opinions about him because he loves Daredevil, and of course, very much anti-murder. And again, Madani kind of treats the honest cop like crap, including shooting him in the vest at one time.
Right.
Also, I love the visual insult, which is also it's a deep cut reference. Punisher is dressed like a cop for part of the season, which I'm sure is not is kind of a vague insult to Mahoney, and it's a reference to the Ultimate comics. Ultimate Punisher was not a Marine; he was a cop.
Oh, okay, interesting.
That's kind of a fun little reference there. But I mean, yeah, after he pulls his bacon out of the fire literally with the ambulance, he's kind of learning about the compromise you make with the Punisher, which is another kind of staple, kind of a pillar of the character. Punisher's always about he kind of runs in these cop characters, and they usually make compromise because they realize, well, he means well, if not, so he's doing the things kind of like a Batman kind of GCPD thing, only more murder.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I love pairing Madani with Mahoney, but the thing that drags Madani down for me is the repetitive nature of the season. This comes from the pacing issue.
Okay.
Where I'm really tired, especially in the front end of the season. We have this tired debate with Frank Castle where it's no, you can't kill Billy Russo, but Madani, you brought him back to New York to kill Billy Russo.
That is absolutely a valid complaint, Dragon. Absolutely. It's she literally uproots Frank Castle trying to rehabilitate his life and is no, you have to do this now.
Exactly. I mean, to me, that's one of the big handicaps of the season is the repetitiveness with that in particular. The whole debate of well, we brought him back, and I know the point of it. The point is to usher him to the whole Punisher. We have to get on board with the Punisher, going on his crusade by the end of things. Therefore, if we can sway someone like Madani, we can absolutely sway, Frank Castle.
Sure.
I suppose. I mean, that's kind of, it seems like where they're going with it.
Yeah.
And I mean, also, I think it's that repetitive nature just kind of gets to me on the rewatch, just seeing as how silly it is. And also, there's a missed opportunity with the Madani stuff. And I mean, this is maybe asking for too much, but just considering that both she and Frank Castle, with the origin, were essentially shot in the head because of Billy Russo. Because again, the whole crossfire of the family murder, bullet in the head for Frank, and she literally was shot in the head at the end of season 1. You think they'd be a little bit more sympathetic? I think there might be a little bit more there, but I don't know. A missed opportunity, but this is what it is. Let me see if there's anything major where. Oh yeah, of course, the big thing we should talk about before we kind of wind things down. We have to talk about episodes 10 and 11.
Okay.
Just
yeah. The big. Oh God.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I feel like that was the biggest. Why don't you set it up, Dragon?
Sure. So this is episode 10 and 11. This is why I was really curious to get your reaction, because this to me is like,
it was genius. This was some genius storytelling right here, man. It really was.
10 is essentially our episode 8 tradition in the Netflix series. I mean, sorry, 10 is our episode 8 in the kind of the Netflix history of, like, there's always like that really exceptional episode, usually directed by Steven Zerk, but not in this case. Where episode 10, it gets into like a lot of deep cut Punisher stuff, where there's a story. Actually, I believe it's an infamous story if I'm isolating one example with Jigsaw in it particularly. But there are these cases in the Punisher comics where you'll have a villain who will basically try and kind of because Punisher, he's unstoppable. There's no way you can really truly stop the Punisher, but psychologically you could stop the Punisher. So there's be like an elaborate death trap or an elaborate plan to kind of make the Punisher doubt himself. So that's a deep comic pull. I really like that. And we did it here, and I'll admit, basically Billy Russo, thanks to Dumont, kind of having this conversation with Madani, which all the way also that's another hard sell for me in the season, where I don't believe that Madani would be getting therapy from Dumont, given how the animosity between the two of them. I don't believe she just go by there and like hey, let's have a little therapy session.
Right.
I'll admit that's a hard sell, but I love where it goes, and I love the whole debate about is this whole episode's framed around the debate is Frank Castle the same as Billy Russo? Are the Punisher and Jigsaw really the same fundamentally? Are these guys who are arch nemesis? Do they have more in common than you think? And basically through this conversation, Krista learns, the way you break the Punisher is that he thinks he's better than Billy Russo. So you take him down to his level with this really awesome elaborate death trap of let's literally put the Punisher in Jigsaw's head, basically doing this really really sadistic and really well planned, the lights and the sounds to disorient him, and just like surrounding him by all the vets and everything, putting him in a literal war zone on the home front to simulate what's going on in Billy Russo's head that we've been seeing in these nightmare sequences all this season as he's wearing the skull vest and everything. He's been terrified of the skull. Now the skull's going to bend to his whim.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, so basically we beat the crap out of the Punisher and make him think that he killed 3 women, which is really... And Bernthal's performance in that scene after he's just gobsmacked by, oh my god,
I feel like that moment right there is absolutely Bernthal's finest moment.
Absolutely, I think that in the hospital acting, this acting in the hospital scene that follows it as well,
and just the whole idea of like breaking the Punisher by making him think that he killed innocent people, just fucking great, brilliant.
Exactly, because the line between him and Jigsaw, I think the point of the episode, the point of the story is, the difference is Jigsaw, literally, he cannot reflect on his actions, because again, the whole broken mirror thing. He can't. He cannot. He doesn't feel any remorse, because that's. I don't know if that's necessarily a criticism against the season or not, because I like where the story goes. Is that ultimately, as much as I like this section of the Jigsaw stuff, and this is the ultimate payoff, this episode 10, 11 thing, is that he doesn't, after he learns, oh, this is what I did to him, he just doesn't feel bad about it at all. He doesn't like take any responsibility for his actions, but then again, he's a bad guy, so I don't know, maybe that's good, right? Maybe that's not. I'm not sure.
Sure.
But yeah, it's a fact that, Punisher, he feels remorse and he has, human emotions and kind of like complex human emotions of Frank Castle. That's what he brings to him.
I mean, that is absolutely like, you feel like you genuinely feel like, all right, like that's it, like game over until the reveal.
And so I'm going to get to the reveal, but just to kind of bridge it with this. So you look at his introduction in Daredevil season 2 with Karen when he meets Karen. He's actually pursuing Karen because
by the way, I still think the rooftop stuff with Daredevil, as much as I like this season, the rooftop stuff with Daredevil is still the best Punisher stuff ever put to screen.
Of course, and that's also my favorite Punisher story ever they adapted with.
Yeah.
Of course. I think Ennis did that too. Anyway, but yeah, of course, when the hospital scene in Daredevil season 2, where basically Karen's trying to save the Irish mobster, from Kitchen Irish. Punisher's whole thing, so he told Karen, like, hey, you have been completely safe because, I'm a Marine, I'm a sharpshooter Marine, as in, like, the rule is 1 shot, 1 kill. And if you notice in that scene, I love, like, the guilt that's on Punisher. It's like, he was shooting kind of wild because Russo is psychologically gotten in his head so much during that scene and trying to, like, fight or flight to the max, like, stabbing him and all sorts, like, beating him to near death and driving him to the brink. He was shooting wild, so he got sloppy. He knows he got sloppy. And then when he sees those dead bodies, that is all the guilt that he's ever had. Like, I violated what part of my code there. 1 shot, 1 kill. How careful and good I am. And civilians have gotten killed. He thinks he's been utterly careless. But then we have the reveal that that is not the case.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Thanks to Karen.
And of course, and Karen, very, very smart that they give her a little more to do with Punisher because she's been pretty integral to the Punisher story.
This is the last Karen Page stuff you're ever going to get, Tiki.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yep, I think she gets a name drop, maybe in Jessica Jones, but this is the last time we see her. It's a nice way to go out with her, though. It's a nice way, just like, kind of her and kind of Frank having a scene. My favorite thing in this whole season, by the way, is it's a silly thing, but I love it. My favorite thing in the season is the 3 women in Frank Castle's life visiting him in this hospital room, being supportive and giving him a pep talk to get him out of his funk. I love that so much. Like these 3 strong female characters, just kind of like, hey, I love them coming. Like Punisher being so isolated, as macho as it gets, having these 3 female characters like in this room, just kind of getting him out of his funk. And very different women, of course. Karen Page being the best of the bunch, and also some powerful acting from Bernthal in this scene too, with the whole. Frank being at the lowest we've ever seen him. He recalls the last moments of his family to Karen because that's the most personal connection he has in a hospital room too when they first met. So it's just utterly great acting there, and the whole 3 dead women. We have 3 living women to kind of get him out of that funk. So again, it's quite fitting.
Mm-hmm.
Quite symmetrical. Right. Yeah. I do. Do you think it's too convenient though? The whole the fact that okay, hey, you didn't get sloppy. They're fine, right? It was Russo who.
Maybe a little bit, but by the same token, I also appreciate. Like I said, I feel like the trade-off for that is that Krista in that moment just becomes evil, and I feel like that is a good turn for her character. Not just suggesting the plan, but signing off. I feel like it was probably her idea to kill the people up front, right? Just to make sure that it went down the way. Yeah,
Krista essentially, whether intentional or not, she signed the death warrant of 3 women.
So that's what I'm saying. I feel like the reveal, if we hadn't had that ramification, maybe I would feel a little differently on it, but I don't know. Yeah, it was a little clean. I feel like at the very least, maybe Dragon kind of have Frank live with it an episode or 2 longer. Because it is kind of over and done within the course of an episode. So I feel like maybe wrap it up in episode 12 instead of episode 11. Yeah. But other than that, I don't necessarily think it's cheap. I think, frankly, I think we would have had a harder time writing Frank out of the situation from a mental point of view, because the situation does do a great job of being that would break Frank Castle, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I really don't see how they would have written him back up after something like that.
Yeah, honestly, T, I think it's a perspective thing, because the first time I watched, I had a problem with it, but on the rewatch, I think I was so compelled by all the other elements of the scene, where, you know what, it was a really strong scene, again, seeing just how affected he was in those scenes, and the fact that, again, it wasn't by his hand, and, it was a setup. It's a little too well figured out a setup, perhaps, but, again, I think I'll give that a gimme before I give some other stuff a gimme. Like,
Sure,
really, Madani's
sure.
going to sit down with Krista? I don't. And how is Krista winning that fight? By the way, I love her going out the window, but I don't buy that she would put up that much of a fight against Madani. I don't know, but
I hear you.
Right, so I guess maybe the last thing we should talk about, unless you had anything major, would be just the ending in general, just like to kind of go over it.
Yeah, the ending is very much pretty much a backdoor for like, hey, if we do season 3, we're doing Warzone. But no, seriously, I do like the ending, and like I think it's a little over the top, but it's over the top in a good way. It's over the top in a way that fits the character. Just that guttural scream, and then I will say, Dre, I will say one thing. I feel like politically speaking, it's a little messy of like him just going in and just like slaying everyone with the gun, just because we don't really know the context of what's going on here,
Right, but I mean, it's on paper. It's the Punisher. He's killing criminals, and it's like they're all gathered. They're all like guns drawn anyway. It's like what? It's like. It's like I think the takeaway is that so it's like I think it's a good final note because Punisher has his own crusade and is the closest he'll ever to happy he'll ever get.
Sure.
He's just him taking down bad guys. He's trauma in his war.
I like that he refuses the job. I feel like that was a good kind of last note for him and Madani to hit.
Absolutely, the whole Madani going as far to offer him basically it would have started the cycle over again. I think he knows that no, I'm not going to be
exactly
someone else other than myself. Like he kind of says this to Amy,
even if it was under an official capacity.
Yeah, the whole dude, the one thing you're good at, kid thing with Amy too. It kind of came into play where Punisher's doing the one thing he's good at.
By the way, I mean I don't necessarily know if the series earned it per se. But the goodbye with Amy was perfect and genuinely heartwarming. I love Frank's line, he's kind of struggling to get out something poetic, well, you see, kid, sometimes in life there's people that come along that change it, and then she just gives him a big bear hug. It's like, that's so fucking nice. That was a great end. That was a great human moment for Frank.
And he set her up with like a diving school guy from the
yeah. By the way, is that a setup for any sort of character? Because it felt like it could have been an Easter egg, I know a guy who's a diving instructor.
No, it's funny you mentioned that, T, because believe it or not, this season really does not, outside some of the Jigsaw stuff, there really is not a lot of Easter eggs in this. I mean, there are Easter eggs, but like a handful.
Right.
Now, before we go, I'm just going to bring up two other comments here because they're kind of roundabout. So, so Rohith Dahar, great guy. Rohith Dahar says, there are two. Basically, there were two the season in total. There are two storylines that had nothing to do with each other, and basically, Rohith Dahar wishes they had picked one, and I absolutely hear him on that point. Where a part of me, it's kind of weird because I feel the John Pilgrim story turned out better.
Yes.
But going into it, as you know...
you can't just not have Billy Russo.
Yeah, I absolutely wanted Jigsaw. So, if I had to pick one, I would have picked Jigsaw. But
obviously, I feel like with more screen time, Jigsaw probably would have played a little better.
Exactly. Again, had we devoted all that, perhaps, I don't know. But then again...
But by the same token, it would have maybe been harder to... give Frank a motive. I don't know. It's interesting, Dragon. It's kind of like I can see both sides of the coin there. At the end of the day, though, kind of weaving into my final thought. I'm sorry. Do you have another comment?
Yeah, I have one more comment. Then I imagine we'd wrap up with our last segment. So Bag Studios, love this guy. Bag Studios says, the writer. He says the writing dips in season 2. Now, it also goes on to say that the plot, it's more involved, hence worth the length, but still a little too long. And he is not satisfied with the ending, with the whole he's not totally
100% satisfied with it either. I just think it's appropriate.
Yeah, I think it's appropriate too. I mean, therefore, I'm satisfied with that. And it's also just with because I think I like the How do you feel about the unceremonious killing of Jigsaw? Because I like that.
Fucking perfect.
It's just like he doesn't give him what he wants. Like no epic struggle. No Batman.
I actively fucking cheered when that happened, Dragon. That was a perfect Punisher moment.
And Madani got her shots in too. Like Madani essentially killed him slowly, and the Punisher's I want you done. I don't want the risk you coming back or anything. Just bam,
Also,
bam.
I wish we got it. I wish we would have gotten a little bit more with this guy, even though I totally realize it would have messed with the flow of the finale. But I really love the random back alley doctor that comes into play.
Remember, he just keeps drinking because he has a gun pointed at his face. And also, remember, he took the money.
Yeah, he did. He did.
And he didn't bother taking the bullets that are sewing him up. He just left it.
No.
Oh God! See, that's the guy who should have done the surgery on his face. But
oh God.
But yeah, I mean, again, just with Bag Studios, again, I agree. I mean, even though I think, again, with the two stories, I think whittling it down to an A story and B story was an excellent move story-wise. But still, have we trimmed it down to maybe an episode, a few less, where we did like the less repetitive, like we can't kill him, we got to find Russo. We spent episodes finding Russo and then Russo's bank robbing and stuff. Like, if we just cut some of that out, I think this might be a little tighter. I don't know.
Right.
All right. So final entry.
All right. So overall, Dragon, I am incredibly satisfied with the season, man. I really am. Like I said, I'm one of the few where season 1 is pretty beloved, but it just didn't click for me. There was just something about the pacing. As I've mentioned before, I don't know why. I can't really put my finger on why, but Micro just didn't really work as a character for me. There was way too much like Frank Castle sitting on a computer. It felt really slow, man. And of course, as we mentioned, Madani, I don't think was integrated nearly as well into the season as she was here. With season 2, yeah, we have the two separate stories, and yeah, they don't really come together. But I think that both stories are genuinely compelling in their own ways. I feel like the Pilgrim stuff has more thematic material to offer. I feel like the Billy Russo stuff is honestly more there just to have some action and be cool, and maybe we could have probably reversed those priorities, given Russo more thematic ties, given Pilgrim more of just kind of like a badass, silent mystery killer type vibe. But at the end of the day, Dragon, I'm very satisfied with this show. I'd love to see John Bernthal back in the MCU at some point. But if this is the last we're gonna get with him, then I do genuinely think this season in particular. Like I said, I think that the rooftop episode of Daredevil is the single best Punisher we've ever had on screen by far. I feel like this season in particular, though, is probably the best overall Punisher story that we've ever gotten on screen. And make no mistake, it's not an airtight story, but I feel like throughout everything it does, throughout all its rockiness, it does come together and really deliver something. And I do think it's underrated, and I think in some small way, I hope that us doing it right before Falcon Winter Soldier will, at least inspire one or two people to be like, you know what, let's go back and give that show a shot.
I mean, people have to do something in between weeks.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
All right, final entry for me. So, maybe not entirely a slam dunk, but way better than it got credit for, because this shit, again, everyone's always coming down on season 2. I feel the show has been absolutely faithful to the character of the Punisher. And again, I do love, ultimately, collectively, the 2.5 seasons, counting Daredevil, because, half season, 2.5 seasons of arc that we got, of him since he spun off from Daredevil, on the whole, I think it would have resonated and shined more had both seasons not been 13 episodes. Because again, if they just whittle that down, I think it might have gotten more buzz, more attention. I don't know. Again, the pacing problems and kind of the plot line padding has always been the show's downfall to an extent. As I said earlier, the Jigsaw payoff, it wasn't what I hoped it'd be, but it did get interesting towards its crescendo, if you will. Yeah. The show was. The tie into the kind of the Falcon Winter Soldier ball, this show was the dark side of the veteran experience in the MCU, and quite respectable in how they did it. Maybe more so in Daredevil in season 1, but the point remains. We didn't turn them into an army. Not every soldier is going to be Cap or Falcon, and we know Bucky gets better over time, but not Frank Castle. Frank Castle, that's why we love him. The final note we hit with the Punisher, he's in the coat, he's got the skull, he's going to work. It's how every Punisher story essentially ends. It's a fitting farewell in that regard. It's the way, I think it's the way to remember the Marvel Netflix Punisher, in my opinion, is to kind of round things out. A little anecdote, given your earlier kind of your hopes for seeing the future of the Punisher. You know what? Tom Holland helped John Bernthal with his audition for the show. He essentially got him the role of the Punisher. They both came into the MCU roughly at the same time, and in a way, much like the comics, Spider-Man brought the Punisher into our lives and the MCU again.
All right. Okay, well, folks, war's over, but I think we all know the Punisher's war is just getting started. Right now, he's probably waiting in a van down by the river, hopefully for a return to the MCU with a vengeance and enough punishment for everyone.
Russo!
Nadim!
Russo!
Nadim!
Where's the